Hello and welcome to Relax and Rewatch. In this video series, I will be watching Friends, the beloved sitcom that ran from 1994 to 2004. I will rewatch every episode and produce commentary on the characters, storylines, interesting background catches, fashion, and whatever else we find worth discussing. Now let's get into it. Now in this episode, I will be rewatching the very first Friends episode that aired on September 22nd in 1994, so 28 years ago. The show itself almost wasn't called Friends. Some of the other name suggestions for the show were Six of One, Friends Like Us, and Insomnia Cafe. The first episode is known by a few different names. These include the pilot, the first one, the one where Monica gets a roommate, and the one where it all began. The pilot episode, like most of the other episodes in the series as well, are shot in Los Angeles, California. The show was filmed at the Warner Brothers lot at the Soundstage 24. And like many of you know, it was filmed in front of a live audience of around 300 people. The show was starred with relatively unknown actors, with Courtney Cox being the most famous actress of the six at the time. If you were wondering how old the actors were when they started filming, well, the youngest was Matthew Perry at 24, Jennifer Aniston, 25, Matt LeBlanc, 26, David Schwimmer, 27, Courtney Cox, 30, and Lisa, 31, making her the oldest. The first scene of the pilot opens up with an exterior shot of Central Perk. During the course of 10 seasons, this cafe will be seen visited a lot by the characters for hanging out, going on dates, having heart-to-heart discussions, and some of the characters even end up working in this legendary cafe. If you would like to visit a Central Perk cafe, supposedly there are replicas of it in Liverpool, UK, and in China. In the first scene that happens inside the Central Perk cafe, we are introduced to Monica, Joey, Chandler, and Phoebe. And we also meet Ross, who comes in whining about his failed marriage. In the same scene, Ross makes his famous line, "I just want to be married," and in rushes Rachel. For some reason her hair is wet. I don't see anybody else's hair being wet, and in the exterior shot it didn't look like it was raining, so I was kind of wondering about that. Anyways, Monica introduces her to everyone as another Lincoln High survivor. And I looked this up. Supposedly this is a fictional high school. But in the Friends universe, it exists in Long Island, New York. Although there actually is an Abraham Lincoln High School in Brooklyn, New York. Ross accidentally opens up his umbrella while going to shake Rachel's hand. And I was wondering if this is some foreshadowing of the bad luck between them and in their relationship. And yes, eventually marriage. Monica orders her a decaf coffee, and we learned that Rachel apparently takes her coffee with sweet and low sweeteners. Ross is very interested in what Rachel has to say in this scene, while she describes her almost husband looking like Mr. Potato Head. And if you don't know, Mr. Potato Head is an American toy consisting of a plastic model of a potato head, to which a variety of plastic parts can be attached. Typically ears, eyes, shoes, hats, nose, pants, and mouth. Moving on, next we see the very first exterior shot of the famous apartment building, where Chandler, Joey, Monica, and by the end of this episode also Rachel will live. This apartment building actually exists at 90 Bedford Street in New York. So as I previously stated, the actual show wasn't filmed in this apartment building. Most of the friends seem to be watching a soap opera on TV, while Rachel is talking on the phone with her dad. Her dad seemed to be suggesting that it doesn't matter whether she loves her husband or not, that she should have, I guess, married him anyways, even though she doesn't love him. And I was wondering if this was foreshadowing of the fact that in a future season, and a bit of a background catch here, at 6 minutes 1 second, the gang turns to Rachel to see what she's talking about with her dad, and the TV is turned off even though they were just watching the show. So did they just turn the TV off so they could hear better? I don't know what's going on here. I want to talk a little bit about this beautiful wedding dress that Rachel is wearing. It was provided by the costume designer Deborah McGuire. She spent 10 years dressing the cast of Friends. Apparently she found it in the Warner Brothers costume department, and no alterations were needed. It fit Rachel or Jennifer Aniston perfectly. And she went on to say that at that time, Rachel was a Jewish princess, and this was a kind of a perfect Long Island princess dress, slightly over the top, but not too much. It had to be tasteful, since Rachel had cute taste. So the gang is still hanging out at Monica's apartment, and Phoebe is singing her own version of the My Favorite Things from The Sound of Music. At 7 minutes 30 seconds, Joey is seen rocking his beautiful ball haircut, and he is making a move on Rachel. However, he does not use his famous line, "How you doing?" At 7 minutes 40 seconds, Monica's boyfriend, Paul the wine guy, is ringing the doorbell, and for some reason Chandler is answering the call in someone else's apartment. Interesting. The character of Paul the wine guy is played by John Allen Nelson. He's an actor and screenwriter, best known for his roles in Santa Barbara, Baywatch, 24, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and the movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Paul is actually the first of Monica's 13 boyfriends or love interests that she has in the show. And here we have my first continuity catch. At 8 minutes 37 seconds, Phoebe is sitting at the table, pulling her eyelashes. Yet at 8 minutes 41 seconds, she is sitting on the couch behind Paul, in the background drinking tea. So, where are you, Phoebe? Then we see Rachel and Ross discussing the honeymoon that never happened. I guess Rachel and Barry were planning on going to Aruba for the honeymoon. Interestingly, we see a shot of Rachel at 9 minutes 4 seconds, and it seems like Ross is still talking, but there is no audio, but he's gesturing very passionately with his hands, even though he's not saying anything. And I was wondering, why is Rachel still wearing her wedding dress? Monica is known to be very hospitable, and I don't think she would let her guest stay in a wedding dress, a wet wedding dress at that. I think she would have offered her some normal dry clothes by now. Next we see an exterior shot of Ross's apartment building. He lives in this apartment until season 5. And I must say, Ross must have just moved in, because the apartment looks quite empty. Joey and Chandler are helping him put some furniture together, and they are great friends for coming over, although they do not seem to be that super helpful. At 10 minutes 10 seconds, Ross suggests that he should have known that Carol was a lesbian, because she always drank her beer out of the can, which is interesting, because, well, I guess drinking from a can, or bottle perhaps, makes you a lesbian. The boys are drinking beer in this scene, and Ross says that it is Carol's favorite beer. I squinted, but I couldn't see what the beer was, so if any of you guys know what that beer is that Ross and the guys are holding, please let me know. Next we see Monica and Paul the wine guy at a restaurant, and they are discussing breakups and divorce. Paul tells Monica that he actually broke his ex-wife's watch, and he's suggesting that Ross should do the same thing to his ex-wife. We will get a call back to this moment later in the episode. Next we see Rachel either talking on the phone or leaving a message to Barry. During this monologue, we learn that Barry apparently makes love with his socks on. Alright. I find Rachel looks really cute in this scene. Pink really suits her. Perhaps that is a shirt that Monica finally gave her to wear instead of that wet wedding dress. Now we are back to Ross's apartment. Here we see Joey encouraging Ross, saying that there is another woman out there for him. He's comparing the amount of women to the amount of ice cream flavors that are out there, and he is encouraging Ross and telling him to grab a spoon. At 11 minutes 57 seconds, something caught my eye. There is a poster behind Chandler. It looks very interesting, so I looked into it. It says, "The Speed Racer Show, a blast from the past." And apparently that is an authentic poster. It was for the movie of that name, and it was an American compilation film produced by Streamline Pictures, and it hit the theaters in 1992. So this was a 2-year-old poster by the time this episode was filmed. Next we go back to the restaurant with Monica and Paul the wine guy, and Paul is actually revealing to Monica that he hasn't had sex for 2 years. And with another clumsy transition, we move back to Monica's apartment, where Rachel is watching TV, and she's watching a scene where someone is getting married, and she's justifying it by saying, "Well, see, those two love each other." Back at Ross's apartment, he asks the guys, "Do you guys know how long it has been since I grabbed a spoon?" And he asks the guys, "Do the words 'Billy, don't be a hero' mean anything to you?" "Billy, Don't Be a Hero" is a song that was published in 1974, so 20 years prior to this episode airing. So I think Ross was just trying to make a point about it being a very long time ago since he grabbed a spoon. Next, Ross wonders who would he even ask out? And then he looks out the window, and we got to Rachel in front of a big picture window in Monica's apartment, looking out and looking lonely. At 14 minutes 20 seconds, Rachel says she's never made coffee. I think this is foreshadowing to her career as a not-so-great waitress. Chandler and Joey, they taste the coffee that Rachel just made, and apparently it's not good. 15 minutes 4 seconds, I clocked that Monica's apartment number is 5 right now. We will track this because it does change during the 10 seasons of this show. Next, at 16 minutes 55 seconds, we are at Monica's restaurant. We get an exterior shot of the restaurant, but then there has been no name given to this restaurant where she works at the moment. Inside the restaurant, Monica and her co-worker Franny seem to be prepping food. They get to talking about Monica's love life, and Monica reveals to Franny that she is going out with the Paul the wine guy from the restaurant, and apparently Franny has been out with him too. And it turns out Paul has used the same pickup lines on her and told the same stories to her, which apparently then aren't true. Back at Central Perk Cafe, Rachel storms in with shopping bags, and she tells the friends that she was laughed out of 12 interviews today in one day. Oof, those interviews must not have lasted very long. Can you imagine going to 12 interviews in one day? That's quite a few. And being laughed out of them every single time. She says she bought Joan and David boots for 50% off. Joan and David is a fashion company founded in 1968. It was very popular in the 90s, and they had a flagship store in New York, so I guess we could assume that's where Rachel was shopping at and on that day. Joan and David sought bankruptcy protection in 2000 and was sold to Maxwell Shoe Company. At 19 minutes, we find out that Phoebe moved to the city at 14 years old. Mother had just killed herself. She lived with an albino guy who cleaned windshields at Port Authority. This is a place in New York City. On a side note, I would like to know how did Phoebe end up in this group of friends. But sadly, to my knowledge, we never really get a full backstory on her and how she wound up friends with these people. And then we got to Monica's apartment, and there Rachel famously cuts all of her credit cards and starts living independently. At 20 minutes, 23 seconds, Rachel finds Paul the wine guy's watch under the couch, and Monica, of course, steps on it. This, of course, is a callback to the earlier moment in the restaurant when Paul told Monica that he stepped on his ex-wife's watch as a revenge. In a 2017 BuzzFeed interview, John Allen actually told the interviewer that he thinks that it was probably just a fake $10 Rolex, because Paul the wine guy was fake and sleazy like that. Next, we have a very sweet moment between Ross and Rachel. They share a cookie, and I think this maybe symbolizes them sharing their first sweet moment together. Ross reveals to Rachel that he had a major crush on her in high school, and Rachel says that she knew, even though she also thought he was just Monica's geeky older brother. But she does say she would consider going out with him maybe sometime. Ross is very excited about this and says maybe he will ask her out sometime. At 21 minutes, 55 seconds, Monica comes out and asks, "What's up with you?" And Ross says, "I just grabbed the spoon." This is one of my favorite moments in this episode. Very cute. In the last scene, we find out that Rachel has actually gotten herself a job as Central Perk, as a waitress. She is serving coffee to her group of friends, and apparently the gang only feels safe to drink the coffee because they find out Rachel actually didn't make the coffee, she's just serving it. Another callback to an earlier scene in the episode. So that was it for the very first episode of Friends. I would say this episode does what the pilot is supposed to do, meaning it establishes the characters and their personalities and a little bit of what makes them unique. The main sets that we will be frequently visiting in this show are also established, except the boys' apartment, Joey and Chandler's apartment, is not established in this episode yet. Although Chandler did have some funny moments in this and funny lines in this episode, I find he didn't have much of a plot or storyline in this episode yet. Fashion-wise, I would say Rachel was the cutest dressed. I, of course, appreciated the beautiful wedding dress, but also her other clothing was cute, and her hair, of course, the famous Rachel hair, is always on point. I found Monica's clothing very bland in this episode, and also the colors she was wearing was a little disappointing, but her style does pick up quite fast in the next episodes. We'll be looking forward to that. The episode ends with a feeling of taking charge of your own life and being proactive when it comes to your own happiness and success. It also ends with a hopefulness about future. This was a very fun episode to watch, and it definitely leaves you wanting to watch more, and I absolutely will. So please stay tuned for my next episode that will be about the episode 2 of the season 1 of Friends. That episode is called The One with the Sonogram at the End. So I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Bye bye!